In this lesson, we will solve equations by using addition and subtraction, and we will solve equations by using multiplication and division. So we do have a couple of vocabulary. The first is equivalent equation, and those are equations that have the same solution. So equivalent just means equal. And then we have solve an equation, which is the process of finding all values of the variable that make the equation a true statement. So you're finding the value that makes it true. So we're going to follow the addition property of equality. And what it states that is if we can suppose the HHS boys tennis team has 15 members and the girls do as well, if they both add 3 players to their tennis team, we would still have an equal amount of players, 18 on each team. And that's the addition property of equality. It states that if an equation is true and the same number is added to each side, then the resulting equation is true. So if we use letters here, if A is equal to B, then A plus C is equal to B plus C. So in this situation, T plus 3 is equal to 5. If I add 2 to each side, I would get T plus 5 is equal to 7. It doesn't change what the value of T would be. So if I were going to isolate the variable, which means I'm going to solve for C, in this case I can work vertically, which would be to add 22, because that's the inverse of subtracting 22, would be adding 22. And I would add 22 here as well, and I get C equals 76, and this would be my solution. Or I can work horizontally. This is subtract 22, so I would have C minus 22 plus 22 equals 54 plus 22. And some of you may not like this method, so maybe you'll want to stick with the vertical. You're going to find that I often work vertically, so I'm going to do more of the vertical method, but I did want to show you the horizontal method because that is something people use as well. So the subtraction property of equality states that if an equation is true and I subtract the same amount from both sides, the resulting equation would also be true. So as you can see here, 17 is equal to 17. So if I subtract 9 from each side, I get 8 equals to 8. Still a true statement. So looking here, do you see how this is adding 63 to m? So to get m by itself, I subtract 63. Subtract 63.
Go to your home.
So this would be 9 minus 3, which is 6. 7 minus 6, which is 1, which is m equals 16. And so then this would be, if I would do like a minus 12 here and a plus 16 here, this is adding 16. So the inverse or opposite of adding 16 is subtracting 16. Subtracting 16. So I get negative 28 is equal to p. So this is p equals negative 28. This is m equals 16. You're going to work some examples in your notes. All right, the multiplication property of equality states that if an equation is true and then I multiply each side by the same amount, the resulting equation would also be true. So here, if I multiply by a half on each side, then I get 5 equals 5. That's still a true statement. So if the division property of equality states that if I divide the same number by each side, the result will be true. Look at this example, 28 is equal to 28. I divide both sides by negative 7 and I get negative 4 is equal to negative 4. Still a true statement. And we can use that then to solve these equations. Do you see how this is 2/3 times p? Well, to get this 2/3 to be 1, I would multiply it by its reciprocal. So then I have to multiply this side by its reciprocal. And I get p is equal to 3/4. In this situation, do you see how I want to get r by itself? Do you see how r is being multiplied by negative 3? So the inverse of that is to divide by negative 3. So I divide by negative 3, and I get negative 13 is equal to r. So you'll practice some multiplication and division property in your notes. Now let's put it together. Of a group of 13 to 15-year-olds surveyed, 225, or about 9/20, said they talk on the telephone while they watch television. About how many girls were surveyed? So what we're going to do is we're going to say let G equal girls surveyed, because that's what we're looking for. 9/20 of the girls is equal to 225. I've now written an equation that I can solve. If you will look here, this is multiplying G times 9/20. To get this to be 1, I would multiply it by its reciprocal. We always do that with fractions, is multiply by the reciprocal to get rid of them. And then I would take 225 times 20 over 9. if you would use your calculator for this, you could easily get something very quickly. So this is going to be G equals 500, and then I could just answer the question, 500 girls were surveyed. And you're going to have a real world example to try in your notes.